Who wants to play bodies, bodies, bodies?
Hello everyone and welcome back to another Backlot Banter movie review. My name is Tucker Hazel and this is my co-host with the Gen Z body, Tanner Dykstra, and today we're here to talk about A24's newest whodunit slasher satire, as I am dubbing it, Bodies, 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 starring a nice little cast of up-and-coming actors. And if you want to talk to us about Bodies, 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 or any of the other many movies that are coming out this summer, you can join our Discord. That link is in the top description, and while you're down there, you can like this video. You can subscribe to our channel, of which there are many movie reviews being uploaded to, and ring that bell so you know when those many movie reviews are being uploaded specifically. But Tanner, thank you very much for joining me. We have seen Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. You and I have been kind of on the edge of our seats waiting for this one. A24 has been having a killer year, and does this movie add to that year, in your opinion?
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty solid. I mean, at least for this cast alone, I was very wary going into Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. I was like, either this movie is gonna hit really hard, or it's going to, fall flat on its face in what it's attempting to do with its Gen Z sort of jab.
It was certainly possible.
It was certainly possible, and funny enough, I don't think it falls on either of those categories for me. I think it's a solid bit of fun. You know what I mean? I mean the cast is having a good time. This is a slasher romp that'll keep you guessing throughout.
Yep.
So yeah, from that standpoint, it's a very solid sort of mystery that kept me engaged the whole runtime. I was like, okay, this character was just here, but what is their motivation for doing this? What could be the twist coming somehow? So yeah, from that standpoint, I really liked it.
Yeah, and it's a movie that you mentioned has a twist, and I think the twist is really what sells this movie for me, and frankly, what makes it one of my favorite movies of the year. I don't think that this idea could have been handled much better, in my opinion. I think there are maybe a few holes I could poke in it, but for what this movie is exactly what we wanted they/them to be last week, which is taking horror tropes, horror idea of a couple of crazy, wacky kids, slowly getting picked off one by one. We've been seeing this for 40 years at this point, but place it into the context of modern dialogue, of modern sensibilities, of how teenagers and kids act nowadays, people our age, and because of that, I think it has a really fresh identity, and it has a twist at the end that makes, I think, the entire thing worth it in an entirely new way. And with that, and because of the cast that I thought was great across the board, and I had a couple atmospheric and tonal elements that I thought definitely set this film apart, I think it's a new top-tier A24 movie, in my opinion.
Okay, nice. Yeah, of course, Tucker, there is the twist that you said, which we won't talk about now. We'll talk about that in spoilers after we give our scores.
Because you don't want it spoiled for you, frankly. If you can go in really not knowing, I think it absolutely will boost your enjoyment.
Sure, yeah. But there's a number of things that we can talk about. I want to start with the cast because, as you said, this is a pretty stacked cast of up and comers. You have you have like Amanda Stenberg in your leading, or I guess Amanda Stenberg and Maria Bakalova kind of share this leading role. It's not really, I wasn't really sure who was going to be our main character, and it kind of flops back and forth. But I think at the end of the day, we end up with Maria Bakalova, as sort of this fish out of water. She's from Europe. She's been dating Amanda Stenberg's character Sophie for 6 weeks, and she gets invited to this big opulent house party where people are doing lines of coke and they're fucking having a hurricane party, which is a thing that people have. Maybe not.
It is actually a thing that people have. I mean, okay. I am from Louisiana. I emigrated from Louisiana to Texas because of Hurricane Katrina, and I know from experience of hearing what my dad had to go, help some people. That absolutely happens, and it's the first time I've ever seen that topic covered in a film, especially a film of this popular cast and popular concept. It's a really cool idea to set a horror movie there because it absolutely makes a lot of the horror movie tropes feel a lot more natural. Want to know why no one can get to them? Because they're all hunkered down in their houses as well. Want to know why the light goes out? Because it's a hurricane. Of course the lights are going to go out. Want to know why there's always this droning rain sound in the background that creates a really interesting atmosphere? Because it's raining out. It's a fucking hurricane. And I think that one concept absolutely adds a nice layer on top of all of this.
But of course, as we alluded to, this movie does take jabs at sort of Gen Z modern culture and things like that. We have a cast of 20-somethings, except for Pete Davidson. Is Pete Davidson 30 yet? He seems like he might be.
He was born in 1933, so he's 7 years older than me. He's not quite 30 yet.
Okay, sounds good. But yeah, I mean, I think some of our stereotypes, some of our caricatures are pretty fun. I especially appreciated Rachel Sennett's sort of like Valley Girl podcast host sort of thing. I think she did a really fun job. She's probably the most fun character out of this whole
Yeah.
group here. But that being said, Pete Davidson is also fine as this guy, as this kind of like Pete Davidson caricature of this rich boy. You know, it's his parents' house, and he's sort of like jealous of everyone who's there, and he's like,
Yeah.
don't touch my parents' stuff."
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. So, but everyone else is solid, I would say.
I honestly think the cast is great all around. I don't think there's anyone in here that turns in a weak performance. I think everyone has their own distinct personality. I think what's really cool is across the course of the film, you come to realize how everyone has a history with one another, and they've got these grudges that they're all holding, which absolutely increase the tension between basically everyone. And you're uncovering secrets along with some of these characters. Yeah, especially Maria Blachalova's character, who is the sort of in for the audience because she doesn't know everyone. And I found that dynamic to be really refreshing because I'm so used to seeing horror characters not only be underdeveloped and pretty flat, but not have interesting personalities and be there to be picked off. But because each character felt like they were established and developed to about the same degree, it was a genuine surprise when someone ended up dying at a random point. And because of that, I was absolutely on my seat for the entire runtime of the film. Like, how many people will survive? I have no idea. And frankly, that is part of the slasher horror subversion that this movie goes for that I think absolutely sets it apart from a lot of other things you expect from this kind of horror movie.
Sure. Yeah. I did say, you know, that these are Gen Z caricatures sort of thing, and you introduced this film as a satire. But at the end of the day, I'm not really sure what this film is saying or what it's what the main point of it is. I think at the end of the day, and maybe why I sort of fall not on the high end of saying like, oh, this film is such a good, you know, satirization of modern the culture of modern young people, or it doesn't like try too hard and fall flat on its face. It's kind of just straight down the middle of like, here are some like caricatures of Gen Z people that we're putting in funny scenarios, and sometimes they deliver funny lines. I thought I was chuckling quite a few times in this. I didn't think there was nothing overtly like hilarious that's gonna stick in my mind, but
Yeah.
I guess it would just come back to like, I don't know if this is a satire. What is it saying about young people, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can really pick out of it for a theme is maybe that the communication style of younger people has become so overcomplicated with different terminology and the things that they are riffing on throughout this film and a lot of the dialogue. And because of that lack of communication and the barriers these young people are putting up, which of course everyone of all generations do, but it's just focused on this kind of generation, that is making it so they can't quite connect to each other, and it ultimately leads to their downfall through not wanting to work together in a tense and horrifying situation. But because of the satirical tone, because the film takes itself a lot less seriously in terms of its characters saying things that are funny to the audience, but absolutely not very funny in the world of the characters. And then the thing that's why for me the comedy wasn't uproariously funny, but it was always really clever throughout. And I think that when people are watching this the trailer for this movie, and they're getting lines like "triggered," and they're getting lines like
"You're silencing me,"
and silencing. Yes, it feels like that was going to be all the movie was. But frankly, I think there's a lot less of that than I was expecting, and it's a lot deeper than that than I was expecting as well.
Sure. Yeah. Takio, do you maybe want to go into that a bit further, or do you just want to give scores and go to spoilers?
The last thing I want to say before we get into spoilers is that I also think the score for this movie is very good.
Sure.
Not only my score will be very good, but the music for this movie is very good because it takes a sort of piano riff horror score that we've heard plenty of times in things like Halloween and Friday the 13th, but gives it a nice techno flair, and there's a lot of bass to it. So it feels like a horror movie, but definitely has a modern edge to it, which I think is a really nice, continuation of the tone that this movie is going for. Everything is a little bit colorful and poppy, and they're using their phones for flashlights throughout, and they're trying to send text. It definitely feels very through and through like a horror movie set in modern day, and not just like a skin of that. It is thoroughly saturated with modern day culture in a way that I found really, very satisfying and very fresh.
Yeah.
And because of that, I'm going to give it a 9.2 out of 10. I think this movie is fantastic, and especially because of the twist, which we will soon get into.
Yep. I'm going to give this a 7.3. Like I said, had quite a few good chuckles in it for me, having me laughing all the way through. Cast was pretty solid, I would say. Kept me guessing as well. Kept me, sort of engaged in the narrative in that sort of sense. But at the end of the day, I guess I'm just like, I wanted maybe something a bit more of like, what are we saying? Why are we doing this? That sort of thing. And Tucker, I think your reading is good. I think that's a solid reading of it. But like, what is specifically unique to, making this movie a satirization of Gen Z people about that sort of thing? But regardless, I mean, there is a sort of, the twist of it is particularly Gen Z, I would say. And a twist that I haven't really seen in other horror movies of this ilk, which is that the inciting incident, the death of Dave, Pete Davidson's character, is his own fault. He accidentally slits his own throat with a giant machete sword and then sets this whole thing in motion. Which, on one hand, I could see people saying, like, oh, it takes the wind out of the sails of the whole movie, what was this all for? But I guess on the other hand, it is like, that's what makes this a dark comedy, maybe taking a page out of the book of, maybe like a Coen Brothers or something like that, where it's a comedy of errors, a very dark, black comedy of errors.
Errors which end up with basically everyone in the entire movie dying. And I think that it is that twist that makes this movie something special, in my eyes. I pegged that this was a possibility pretty early on, but frankly, I don't think that's a problem, because the moment I was like, hold on, there's a chance that there's not a killer, and that each of these deaths was an accident, or the ones that we didn't see was an accident, I found to be really compelling. Like, if they do that, that would be awesome. And they absolutely did it, and they committed to it, and I think that was a really great choice, because it makes it a different kind of horror movie. It is, in essence, it's not a slasher anymore. Of course, it's set up, paced like a slasher, but it is a psychological thriller, because these characters are creating the fear in their minds. They're like, there's got to be a killer. Of course there's a killer.
Yeah.
It's dark. We're a bunch of scared teens. Someone's got to be killing everyone. And that's just absolutely not true. And almost, or over half the cast ends up dying by their own hands, which I find to also be a really interesting twist. And pay off a lot of those conflicts and grudges and things that I was talking about earlier that I felt were really set up through the dialogue and the dynamics. But culminate in really tense scenes where I'm like, I don't know who's going to die, because they're all clambering around, and and everyone's scattering off and messing, and anyone could die at any moment at their own hands, which I found really, really special.
Yeah, I mean, I guess only Elizabeth and David die of their own volition, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone else is either killed purposely or accidentally by other characters. One thing that didn't really get paid off is the sort of idea that Sophie was cheating on B. Is that Maria Bakalova's name?
Yes.
The character's name? The ending is a bit fine. It's fine, I think, ultimately. Like, the last line, you really gotta sell that last line, and the last line is, I have reception. Yeah. I don't know. And then this character Max shows up and stuff like that. It felt like we were tying up loose ends, but not the right ones, I guess, maybe.
No, I think that's fair, but I do think that it maybe is a little more clever than you're giving it credit for, because the idea of creating tension between our final two living party members, ostensibly, is because of that relationship, and also because it's about check the text. And so they're scrambling for a phone, and when she finds a phone, she's like, this isn't my phone. That's when you find out that it's Pete Davidson killed himself and all of that. So I think that there was a setup and payoff through that angle, and I'm glad that they absolutely had all of these grudges and conflicts between the characters, because it really did heighten the tension. And when someone pops up behind basically anyone, you're like, oh, they've got a problem with them though, so they could be the killer, and a knife could be stabbed into anyone's back at any moment. And I also do think that that is combined with the sort of just general sexual tension that's between like basically everyone in this movie. It's like, well, they all have some sort of history together, and I find that to be very different than any other horror movie I'd seen.
Yeah. I guess, but I felt I was just lacking the resolution to that Sophie and B. Where's the payoff to them with Sophie cheating, I guess, is my thing. So that's that's something I felt was a bit lacking at the end of the film, but otherwise, solid movie. I liked it.
Yeah, I really did love this movie, and though I don't know if it's one I'm going to revisit again soon, I think it'll absolutely become an A24 horror classic, an A24 classic, a perfect recontextualization of horror movie tropes into the modern era, and really just using modern dialogue and modern characters to their fullest potential. I think this movie is really special, and I think with time people will really start to appreciate it. At least I hope that they end up aligning with my taste.
No, Tucker, they're just gonna call it cringe or whatever.
No,
that's what we do now.
possible.
That's Gen Z people. That's what we do.
It's very true, very true.
Yes.
But thank you very much for joining me on this review, Tanner, and thank you very much if you stuck around to the end for listening to our review. I had a lot of fun talking about this movie, and we'll have a lot of fun talking about other movies when we record those reviews after we see those movies in the future.